The scorching sun bore down on the windswept ruins of ancient Khan, where time itself seemed entombed beneath centuries of sand and silence. Dr. Amina El-Tayeb, a fiercely principled historian in her late 30s, wiped the grit from her brow as she brushed aside the last layer of debris from a half-collapsed adobe wall. Her fingers trembled not from the heat, but from the feeling that something monumental lay just beneath her touch. The ruins belonged to a long-forgotten Himyarite outpost, untouched by tourists or the careless excavation of modern archaeologists. Amina had received a secretive tip from a dying librarian in Cairo, letter scrolled in a forgotten dialect, claiming that a record of what lay beneath the House of Abraham rests where Yemen bleeds dust. It had led her here, against the warnings of every institution she'd once trusted. And now, buried in the crumbled remains of what might have been a priest's chamber, her trowel struck aged leather. His voice came, then abruptly cut off. She exhaled sharply and pried at loose a manuscript, bound in time-worn black hide, the texture brittle yet oddly preserved. There were no titles, no authors, only a crude engraving of a cube surrounded by 7 concentric circles, a symbol she didn't recognize. Not part of the original text. A warning, a curse, or a seal. She realized she was not the first to find this manuscript, and she may not survive being the last. Beneath a stone, before the stone, lies the eye, ... Her research partner, Dr. Samir Haddad, who had been photographing nearby inscriptions, was gone. His equipment lay abandoned, tripod toppled, camera still recording. Her thoughts churned like desert winds. Samir's disappearance haunted her. The authorities in Sana'a offered only shrugs and polite indifference. People vanish all the time, one officer had said, especially foreigners with too many questions. There was only one name that kept surfacing when she asked in hushed tones around Cairo's old Islamic universities and antique suits. As she opened its first pages, her Arabic faltered. She darted through the narrow corridors of the dig site, calling his name, her voice bouncing off mud brick walls like a ghost answering itself. No sign of struggle, no footprints in the sand, save hers. The door creaked open with a hesitant groan, revealing a man hunched over a candlelit desk, etching elaborate letters into vellum with near religious devotion. Only when she returned to the chamber did she notice the final page of the manuscript was torn and smeared with something wet. The script was a blend ancient Sabia laced with Nabudian form Zen written in ink that shimmered faintly as if reacting to sunlight. He studied the symbol on its cover, his fingertips brushing the worn leather like one touches a wound that hasn't healed. He was accused of forging an early Quranic parchment, a claim he always denied. He hadn't been seen since until now, a record untouched by caliph or king, ... She whispered aloud, translating what little she could. Before she could continue, the wind shifted naturally. A sharp whistle echoed through the ruins. She looked up. After an hour, he closed the manuscript and took a long breath. Amina. Panic seized her chest. Every 7th line contains a reference to the Eye of Abraham. The text implies it was once hidden beneath the Kaaba and removed. He looked up, voice dropping, but not by pagans, by someone who feared what it revealed, but cloaked in metaphors, the watcher beneath the stone, the mouth of the desert that cannot lie. If we go down this path, you must understand something. There are guardians of this secret. I used to be one of them. These are not poetic flourishes. They are coordinates, clues, blood, and you're holding something that shouldn't exist. He finally turned, and Amina was startled to see the intensity in his eyes that had once beheld something terrible. A bloodied symbol, 3 vertical slashes beneath a crescent had been deliberately marked at the bottom margin of the last intact page. Their mission isn't to protect the faith, it's to protect what lies beneath it. The sun dipped behind the hills as a cold dread settled in Amina's bones. There's only one place where the symbols point next, specifically, the lost crypts beneath the Sulaimani library. Ottoman caliphs may have taken more than manuscripts out of Mecca. Some secrets, she now knew, were protected not by dust or time, but by those who would kill to keep them buried. The manuscript lay sealed in a steel case. Amina sat in the dim cabin of a night train headed for Cairo, but Amina knew Samir hadn't vanished, he'd been silenced. She needed someone who could decipher the script, a blend of dialects no one in her immediate network could handle. Yusuf al-Mansur, once considered a rising star in Quranic calligraphy and classical Arabic philology. Yusuf had vanished from academic circles 5 years ago, after a highly publicized scandal. Amina tracked him to a crumbling Ottoman-era apartment tucked above a neglected bookstore in Old Cairo, where the air reeked of ink, dust, and old parchment. He didn't look up. "You're late?" he murmured. "You knew I was coming? I heard your name whispered 2 nights ago in a dream." She handed him the manuscript with trembling hands. "I was warned about this text years ago, by the same people who ruined me." "Then you believe it's real, and it's dangerous." He flipped through the pages in silence, his brows furrowing as he began to read. "There's a hidden code embedded in the structure of the verses," he said, "to something predating everything we've ever been taught." Amina leaned forward. "Where do the clues lead?" Yusuf hesitated, visibly torn between fear and fascination. As Amina prepared to leave, Yusuf stopped her. She froze. "What do you mean?" "I was trained by an order called the Black Veil. They live in shadows, embedded within religious institutions? A chill ran down Amina's spine. She asked. I saw what they were hiding, and I refused to call it divine. Outside, the call to prayer echoed across Cairo's rooftops, a haunting harmony of belief and silence. Inside, two outcasts sealed their fate. They would go to Istanbul not to uncover a myth, but to exhume a truth someone had buried alive. The flight to Istanbul was cold. The silence between Amina and Yusuf, even colder. Both were haunted by the same question. What exactly had they stepped into? Beneath its grandeur lay what most historians ignored: an abandoned subterranean archive, bricked off after the Ottoman collapse and left to rot beneath centuries of stone. Yusuf, navigating the maze-like corridors of the old city with unnerving precision, led Amina through a series of tunnels once used by the palace scribes to transport rare manuscripts unseen. In Istanbul's twilight, the Sulaymani library loomed like a sleeping beast atop the third hill. My teacher said truth should be stored below, so it doesn't burn the world above. I used to come here as a boy, Yusuf whispered. Yusuf pressed a small brass emblem and old token from his black veiled dazin to a hollow. With a metallic groan, the gate shuddered open. By candlelight, they moved methodically. Yusuf searched the shelves for a familiar symbol. Amina, pulled by a whispering instinct, found herself drawn to a heavy chest locked with 7 clasps. By nightfall, they reached a sealed gate, a rusted iron barrier, engraved with strange glyphs, neither Arabic nor Latin. Inside, the air was cold and metallic, thick with mold, and the scent of history long denied. The faithful will deny it, and the silent shall speak. When the woman of no sect carries the words across sands and oceans, the gate will open, and the guardians will fall. The walls of the underground archive were lined with wooden scroll cases, stone tablets, and manuscripts bound in fabrics Amina couldn't identify. As Amina unfurled the first scroll, her fingers trembled. They pried it open. Inside were scrolls wrapped in oilskin, their contents written in an Arabic that predated Islam, early Qurayshi, mixed with South Arabian. It was a ritual manual but not Islamic. The Kaaba had been a site of monotheistic reverence, yes, but also of other practices, more mysterious, some disturbing. She had trusted him once, even shared fragments of her early research. Now, he stood trembling, holding a bloodied satchel. One passage described a reawakening stone, sealed by the prophet before the prophets, presumably Abraham. Another recounted the splitting of a bloodline, a great division between those who would carry the truth and those who would bury it. It described offerings made to the cube, a sacred shrine worshipped centuries before the prophet Muhammad. Then, they found the prophecy. In the final age, the eye shall return, the stone shall stir. But beneath it, an ancient war had just reopened its front. Amina's breath caught in her throat. The woman of no sect. Was it referring to her suddenly? Yusuf stiffened. He turned slowly. Something was wrong. They had not come alone. A flashlight beam sliced through the darkness. A voice, familiar but panicked, echoed. Dr. El-Tayeb. It was Karim Nasser, a fellow historian from the University of Alexandria. I followed you from Cairo. I had to see if the rumors were true, he stammered. But they found me first. Before he could finish, he collapsed dead. Etched crudely into his back, carved with something sharp and cruel, was a Sabaean invocation. Those who read the stone shall choke on its truth. Yusuf grabbed Amina. They've found us. We have to move. As they fled into the shadows, the ancient scroll still clenched in Amina's fist. The world above Istanbul moved on, oblivious, and for the first time, Amina realized, this wasn't a discovery, it was a resurrection. They ran through the underbelly of Istanbul like hunted animals, their breath echoing in narrow stone corridors. Amina's knuckles were white, gripping the scroll as if it were the only thing tethering her to reality. Yusuf was pale, but focused, guiding her through tunnels once used by the Janissaries to escape siege. But now, they weren't escaping history, they were fleeing those who had mastered hiding it. They emerged into the blue mosque courtyard, nearly empty in the pre-dawn mist. Call to prayer was still hours away. It should have been silent, but they weren't alone. From the shadows beneath the domes, 6 figures emerged, all dressed in flowing black robes, faces obscured beneath sheer veils. They moved with synchronized grace, each step calculated to be spontaneous. Their presence didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a ritual. Yusuf stepped in front of Amina, his voice trembling. They are the Black Veil, the enforcers of historical amnesia, not assassins, curators of silence. One of them stepped forward. The veil shifted just enough for Amina to see piercing gray eyes that seemed almost ancient. Amina El-Tayeb, the figure said in Arabic, tinged with Hijazi inflection. You were warned. I must never see the light again. Amina raised her chin. You kill scholars now. Historians, we silence diseases before they become plagues. Before she could answer, Yusuf stepped forward, eyes locked with the speaker's. Brother Farid, a hush fell. The others looked at Yusuf, and for the first time, recognition passed between them. You left the fold, Farid said coldly. You don't speak anymore. I speak because I saw the lie you protect. I speak because I remember what the eyes showed us. Suddenly, one of the veiled figures unsheathed, a long, curved blade, silent and swift. Amina yanked Yusuf back as it sliced through empty air where his head had been. Chaos erupted. They sprinted through the mosque's arches, pursued not by shouts, but the sound of soft, synchronized footfalls, the most terrifying silence Amina had ever heard. They reached the outer gardens, gasping, hiding behind stone columns. That's when a voice whispered from behind a column. Not even the angels were trusted with this truth. Amina spun. A hooded woman, veiled in silk, but not part of the 6 attackers, emerged. Her eyes glinted with intelligence and rebellion. In her hand was a glass pendant, shaped like a teardrop, filled with shifting black sand. "They will kill you," the woman said calmly. "Not because you're wrong, but because you're closer than anyone's been in 1,000 years. "Who are you?" Amina asked. "A daughter." Before she could explain further, she tossed the pendant to Amina. "Find the daughter of the Imam. She holds the cipher that unlocks the second prophecy. And be careful, Amina. Not all who walk in the light are righteous, and not all darkness is blind." The woman vanished into the mist. Yusuf looked at the pendant in Amina's palm. Inside, the black sand now swirled violently as if it had awakened. "Who was she?" Amina asked. Yusuf's voice was low. She was supposed to be dead. Her name was Samira a former high priestess of the Black Veil. Amina's heart thundered, and the words rang again in her head. Not even the angels were trusted with this truth. In the heart of old Judea, Amina and Yusuf waited under assumed names. The pendant from the ghostly Samira now lay on the table between them. Its swirling black sand stilled only when it touched ancient parchment. It reacted to something in the scrolls or to someone. They weren't alone in Jeddah by accident. Samira's final words had pointed them toward a name whispered only among a few exiled scholars. Layla ibn Rashid, a revered imam and spiritual advisor to a powerful religious council in Mecca. Or worse, these texts are fire, and you're carrying them through dry lands. She was in the Margenza hacker, a linguist, a ghost in academic database, and the author of a forbidden thesis titled Pre-Canonical Traditions of the Hijr. Her work was erased, but not before Yusuf had saved fragments. Inside was a fragment of papyrus, scorched at the edges, with a seal identical to the one on Amina's manuscript. Not geographic, temporal. It points to how the Kaaba's purpose has shifted across empires. The language was ancient, but beneath the lines were interlaced numeric inscriptions and Abjad code. But Layla wasn't in the mosques or lecture halls. Before Islam, before even the Quran, it was a gate, a chamber that opened once in 1,000 years during a celestial alignment. The Black Veil was created to guard its original mechanism and to ensure no one opens it again. Instead, Layla arrived wrapped in contradictions, modern in appearance. Traditional in manner, eyes lined with kohl but burning with unrest. They arranged a meeting under cover of night. Amina expected someone hidden and hardened. Beneath it lies a chamber that has not been opened in over 14 centuries. That's where they hid the artifact you're chasing. "You're lucky my father hasn't had you arrested," Layla said flatly, examining the scrolls. "But when I started asking the wrong questions, he disowned me. Said women had no place in sacred engineering." Amina didn't flinch. "You know about the eye, don't you?" Layla hesitated. "I know my father used to speak of it in his sleep, like a nightmare that never left him." She sat down and unwrapped a thin bundle from her satchel. A hidden line glowed faintly. "It's part of a lost prophecy," Layla explained. "One split between 3 documents. This is the second. And together, they form a map." Amina leaned in, heart pounding. "Shifted how?" Layla looked up, her voice low and laced with anguish. The Kaaba was not always the sanctuary it is now. A long silence followed. Yusuf finally spoke. "You know this because you were trained by them." Layla didn't deny it. "My father was one of the last gatekeepers," she said bitterly. Amina stared. "You said mechanism? Are you saying the Kaaba is more than symbolic? If the truth is at the Kaaba's foundation, I want to be there when it opens." Unaware that within their midst walked 3 people who were not here for forgiveness, but for truth. Layla nodded. "It's a vault." At that moment, the pendant on the table pulsed and cracked open, releasing a single grain of black sand that floated in midair, then dropped sharply onto Layla's place. The 3rd night of when the moon would pass directly above the Kaaba's black stone, according to the ancient prophecy. "When the eye of heaven kisses the stone below, the gate shall remember its purpose." Yusuf read it aloud. "Only she who bears no sect shall see the stone unblinded." But as the final tawaf ended and the crowd thinned, Layla led them toward the southern base of the structure, toward a portion of the foundation rarely touched, where a single ancient stone appeared darker than the rest. The pieces were aligning too perfectly. It felt like stepping into a painting you were never meant to alter. Suddenly, a burst of static crackled from a nearby radio. Layla tensed. "They've found us." Black Veil operatives sweep the city every Friday before Fajr. Amina grabbed the scrolls, the pendant, the map. Yusuf held the door open, glancing at Layla. coming with us." Layla hesitated then. "I've been hiding in the shadows long enough." The deeper they went, the colder the air became. After what felt like hours, the staircase ended in a small, circular chamber, no larger than a modest prayer room. And there, at its center, resting atop a stone pedestal, was a locked chest ancient, sealed with a series of interlocking mechanisms shaped like planetary orbits. As the three fled into the narrow alleyways of Old Jeddah, the call to prayer began to echo across the city. But beneath the peaceful chants, a war was awakening, one between faith and forgotten memory. Between daughters who questioned and fathers who buried the past. And somewhere beneath Mecca, the vault of ages stirred. Mecca, the city where history and destiny blurred into one eternal breath. For Amina, walking through its narrow alleys and sacred courtyards was both awe-inspiring and suffocating. When I realized what was hidden here, I took the artifact and ran. That's why they hunted me, why they discredited me. But when he held it out, it shimmered with a pulse not of light, but of memory. Clad in Ihram garments, Amina, Yusuf, and Layla moved with the tides of pilgrims from across the world, faces aglow with reverence. Their path was hidden in plain sight. Layla esticoded map overlaid with the celestial coordinates Yusuf had extracted from the first scroll pointed to a specific time. That night, they blended into the sea of worshippers, circling the Kaaba with practiced solemnity. But it's not passive. It chooses what to show. Or whom. She pressed the glass pendant, the same one given by Samir, against a small, invisible indentation near the stone's edge. The black sand inside the pendant flared once and then disappeared completely. Then came the softest sound, a hiss, like old breath being exhaled after centuries of silence. Suddenly, the stone shifted. Amina stepped back in disbelief as a narrow panel of the Kaaba's foundation slid aside, revealing a stairwell spiraling into utter darkness. "Impossible," Yusuf whispered. "Nothing in the historical records." Layla's voice trembled. "They've hidden it well, even from scripture." They descended. The staircase was carved in basalt, untouched by time. "Is this it?" Amina breathed. Yusuf stepped forward. "This isn't a lock, it's a calendar." He adjusted the final ring to match the current lunar phase. Click. The chest opened. Inside was nothing. Only a velvet-lined depression where something once rested. An object had clearly been here but was now gone. A silence hung so heavy it became a presence in the room. Then Yusuf whispered, "I took it 5 years ago." Amina turned sharply. "What did you just say?" He didn't meet her eyes. "The Black Veil tasked me with translating this chamber's inscriptions years ago." He reached into his robe and retrieved a small black stone. Smooth and cold, no larger than a walnut. Amina could feel it even before touching it. Her skin prickled, her breath hitched. Layla stepped back, eyes wide. "That's the eye of Abraham." Yusuf nodded solemnly. "It doesn't just hold knowledge, it reveals it." Amina reached out, but before she could touch it, the stone flared and the chamber shook. Above, a muffled explosion sounded. "They've found us," Layla said. Yusuf placed the stone into Amina's hand. "We have no time. Whatever it shows, it will change everything." And as the stone met her palm, everything changed. Her body stiffened. Her pupils dilated. Her mind was no longer in the chamber. She was fallen backward through time. Silence, darkness, then light. When Amina opened her eyes, she was no longer in the chamber beneath the Kaaba. She stood barefoot in an endless desert of black sand. Under a sky heavy with swirling stars, the eye of Abraham pulsed in her hand, glowing like a miniature eclipse. But it wasn't the stone that illuminated the world, it was the truths it unveiled. Her body remained frozen in the physical world, standing motionless in the subterranean vault. But in her mind, she traveled. The first vision, a city of fire. She saw a time before Islam, before the Quraysh, before recorded faith. The eye was taken and hidden by a group that called themselves the Al-Sur, Guardians of the Secret. This, Amina realized, was the earliest form of the Black Veil. It was surrounded by tall obelisks covered in runes, and people tribes from every corner of the earth gathered in reverence. But they weren't praying to Allah or any god she knew. But it was not division that separated religions, it was men twisting the truth for empire and ego. They were invoking something older, not a deity, but a force. The Kaaba wasn't a house of God, it was a conduit, a seal placed upon something beneath. The Kaaba stood then too, but it was raw, incomplete. The tribes argued, then fractured. Some wished to preserve the power, others feared it. The second vision, the betrayal of the caliph's screens flickering with her face. She wasn't speaking, but the world was listening. She was pulled forward through centuries. A young caliph, obsessed with unifying power under a single religious authority, stood before the Kaaba with the eye cradled in a golden frame. He had found it in a tomb near Damascus, and in secret, he had brought it here. Now she saw the Umayyad Caliphate, a time of opulence and political ambition. But when he held it, his mind unraveled. Visions of Abraham, Moses, Isa, Muhammad, all praying in one direction, one message, one divine source. spoken through many voices. Everything and nothing I was ready for. It's not done. That was only a whisper. The caliph dropped the eye, ordered it, hidden. His scholars wrote new scriptures. Old ones burned. The sect now fully formed as the Black Veil was given one mission: protect the silence. For truth cannot unite, it only shatters. Voices shouting in Arabic, metal slamming into stone. The third vision, the woman of no sect. Now Amina saw herself, standing atop a minaret in an unnamed city. People below her, confused. Riots in the streets. Layla stood beside her, holding what looked like the eye, but it wasn't glowing anymore. Behind them, Yusuf older, face scarred, eyes filled with loss, watched the crowds with a mix of hope and sorrow. The scene cracked like glass. Reality snapped back. Amina, Yusuf, and Layla crawled through them in silence. The weight of the eye pulsing in Yusuf's satchel like a living heartbeat. Amina collapsed in the vault, gasping. The eye slipped from her hand and rolled to Yusuf, who caught it gently. Layla knelt beside her. "What did you see?" Amina blinked back. Tears. The courtyard was quiet, bathed in moonlight. Pilgrims moved peacefully nearby, unaware that just meters beneath their feet, the foundations of belief had been shaken. He looked older now, tired. The unbearable unity at the heart of all division. It haunted her with every step. But she also felt a growing dread, a sensation, like someone was walking too closely behind them. "But we'll need to split up. I'll lead them away. You to go north." Yusuf placed the eye into a pouch lined with lead foil. Amina steadied her breathing, but the ground above trembled again, this time louder. "They're here," Layla said. "Do we run?" Amina asked. Yusuf shook his head. "We go through." He pulled back a panel in the vault wall, revealing a hidden tunnel, narrow. Ancient crawl space dug centuries ago for the gatekeepers. I didn't want it to end like this. They vanished into the darkness just as the chamber above exploded in light and shrapnel. Behind them, the Kaaba secret was safe for now. But Amina knew, you don't understand what you're dealing with. This truth, if it spreads, it won't just fracture faith, it will collapse it. Nations will fall. Blood will flood the streets. That I had chosen her, and it would speak again. Amina screamed and dropped beside him, cradling him as the eye rolled out of his satchel. The world isn't ready for what's inside that stone. The tunnels beneath Mecca twisted like veins through stone, narrow, suffocating, ancient. Behind them, the thunder of collapsing stone from the hidden chamber echoed like the city itself was groaning under the pressure of secrets finally stirred. Amina still reeled from the visions the eye had shown her, the voices, the truths, and that someone was Layla. They emerged into the cool night air through a concealed drainage gate near the gate of one of the lesser-known entrances to the Masjid al. Yusuf limped his wound from an earlier skirmish, reopening slightly. All around her, life continued. Pilgrims prayed, guards patrolled, minarets sang with faith. "We have to get out of the city," he said. Layla stared out at the Kaaba in the distance, its black drape shimmering. "I know someone who can get us out past the checkpoints," she said slowly. Amina hesitated. "Layla? Are you sure?" But before she could finish, a sharp, mechanical click echoed behind her. Amina froze. She turned slowly to see Layla holding a compact pistol, standard issue, Black Veil design. Her hands shook, but her eyes were hard. "I'm sorry," she said. Yusuf moved, fast, but not fast enough. A suppressed shot rang out. Yusuf cried out, staggering to the ground. The bullet had torn through his side. Blood spilled into the dust. Layla stepped forward and picked it up with reverence. Amina's voice trembled. "You were one of us. You believed." "I still do," Layla said, her voice breaking. "But belief isn't enough. You're not protecting the truth," Amina spat. "You're enslaving it, just like they did." Tears welled in Layla's eyes, but she turned and walked away toward the great gate of Ibrahim, where a black SUV waited. Just before stepping into it, she looked back. "Forgive me, Amina, but you were never meant to open the vault." And then she was gone. Amina ripped off part of her robe to stop Yusuf's bleeding. He was slipping into unconsciousness, his breathing shallow. "Stay with me," she whispered. "You said we'd finish this together?" Yusuf opened his eyes. "There's another way in. The Kaaba. The heart, where the truth was sealed, not the eye." The voices. He passed out before finishing the sentence. Amina looked up at the towering mosque, its lights radiant and indifferent. And beneath it all, a betrayal had unfolded that would change everything. But Amina was not broken. If Layla had taken the eye to silence the truth, then Amina would rise to speak it, even if it meant becoming the enemy of every institution she had ever loved. The world was spinning when Amina awoke. Her wrists were bound with soft silken rope, her head aching with a dull pulse behind her eyes. She was no longer in Mecca's open courtyards, nor in the tunnels. The air carried the scent of oud, earth, and something older, like sealed scrolls and ancient oil. The walls were engraved with countless names in flowing calligraphy, names she recognized from scripture: Abraham, Moses, Isa, Muhammad, and others. Lost to most records, she was somewhere beneath it all, deeper than she thought. A domed chamber surrounded her, immense, candlelit, and utterly silent. And then there were names she didn't recognize at all. "Welcome, Dr. El-Tayeb," The voice came from above. 7 robed figures stood on a marble balcony encircling the chamber. Faces veiled, the insignia of the black veil stitched in gold on their chests. In their hesitation, fractures, they were not united. But something was wrong. Amina noticed it in their posture. "You hold truths that were never meant to be carried alone," one of them said. "And yet, you have carried them well." Another voice, harder. "You defied sacred boundaries, desecrated holy ground. Do you expect absolution?" Amina stood unflinching. "I don't need absolution, I need answers." One figure raised their hand. "Then you will undergo the trial of truth. The same rite our founders endured when the eye was first hidden." Without waiting for her consent, the chamber darkened and the floor beneath her gave way. She fell, not in body, but in soul. Suddenly she was standing not in stone, but in memory, each one with a scroll, extending it to humanity only to have it ripped, rewritten, rebranded. Before her, a battlefield, blood, swords, banners, bearing the names of God and many tongues fighting, not enemies, but each other weeping, not with emotion but, not in grandeur, but in sorrow. She saw temples become fortresses, messages twisted into laws, rituals calcified into control. And then she saw the eye, locked inside the Kaaba's heart. And beside it Yusuf, battered still alive, whispering, "Don't believe what they show you. Ask what they're hiding." The vision shifted. Even if it means becoming the enemy of faith. She stood in the Kaaba, the true Kaaba, as it once was. She trembled, not black-draped or gold-laced. It was bare, made of an adorned stone, and at its center, a glowing well. The source, there. Samira stood, Layla stood, Yusuf stood, and so did someone she couldn't see, clearly a woman veiled in firelight, mirroring Amina's movements. The veiled woman spoke with her voice. "Are you willing to break the silence, knowing it may never be repaired? And I have heard enough lies in my lifetime. Are you willing to lose your name, your people, your purpose? Are you willing to become the enemy of the lie?" Amina's chest burned, and then she whispered, "Yes." She awoke gasping on the cold marble floor of the chamber. The 7 figures were still there, but now only 5 remained. One had removed his veil. An older man, eyes glistening with tears. "All it needs is a satellite connection. The eye has spoken through you," he said. He turned to the others. "The truth must rise, even if it burns us." A commotion erupted among them. 2 others followed him. The rest shouted. 1 fled. The sect was unraveling before her eyes. Others demanding revelation. The call to Fajr was moments away. From this height, the Kaaba glowed like a black star, pulling the prayers of millions toward it. From the shadows emerged Yusuf, leaning on a cane, his side bandaged but his eyes alight. "Told you I wasn't done yet." Amina ran to him, speechless. He placed something in her hand. Everything: the scrolls, the decoded prophecies, the eyes, energy frequencies. I uploaded it, all before we went underground. Amina stared at it. "The truth is yours now, Amina. You saw what it can do, what it means." Behind her, the remaining members of the Black Veil argued, some trying to preserve the centuries-old silence. Amina looked down at the drive. "Then it's time," she said softly, "to let the silence speak." They climbed the final steps to the rooftop of an abandoned Ottoman watchtower on the edge of Mecca's old quarter. Newsrooms froze. Mosques, synagogues, churches, and temples stared at flickering screens. Amina's hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from gravity, and the truth it protected was never meant to be buried. The drive was in her pocket. The portable satellite uplink hummed beside her. Yusuf sat beside the ancient parapet, still weak, but alert. His face carried peace, and something else, a distant sorrow. Behind them, Layla approached, hood drawn low. Amina tensed, but didn't raise the pistol slung across her chest. Layla looked unarmed, defeated, and above all, changed. "I thought I was protecting it," Layla said softly. "But all I was protecting was power." Amina nodded. "We were all raised in cages. You just had the keys earlier than I did." Layla stepped forward and placed a small object on the stone wall. Its black surface was dim now, no longer pulsing as if its work was complete. "Finish it," Layla whispered. "Let the world see what we were never allowed to." The transmission went live. The signal beamed into orbit, then back down again. Satellite towers picked it up across the world. Phones buzzed. On every device, a woman's voice rang out, Amina's voice. 14 centuries ago, the Kaaba became a symbol of unity. But before it was a symbol, it was a seal. The screen split, showing decrypted fragments of the original manuscript. 3D scans of the hidden vault. Scrolls, ritual blueprints, ancient maps, and energy readings from the Eye of Abraham. Then, images from the stone's visions. Prophets, temples, unity shattered by greed, names changed. Books read, religion not born of contradiction but corrupted by it. And finally, a whisper. The truth was never meant to divide us. It was meant to remind us that we were one. The world fractured in real time. In Istanbul, clerics stormed out of mosques, some weeping, some screaming heresy. In Cairo, protesters clashed in Tahrir Square beneath banners of "No More Lies." In Jerusalem, rabbis and imams convened behind closed doors. In Rome, church bells rang out an hour too early. And in Mecca, silence. The black veil collapsed overnight. Some fled, some confessed, others took their own lives. Back on the rooftop, Amina stood facing the dawn. Her voice had stopped. The transmission was complete. The world would never be the same. Yusuf, smiling faintly through his pain, whispered, "You did it," because she knew something else. This wasn't the end. It was a wound torn open. Heal and gore Toto, collapse would come next. Layla touched her shoulder. What now? Now, I disappear.